A 60-foot animal, 100,000 pounds of muscle, the loudest creature on the planet. And it dives into total darkness. We are talking about the sperm whale, an animal that plunges over a mile straight down into a world with no light, crushing pressure, and things living there that science has barely seen. We are going to go down with it. We will find the battles happening in the dark, the scars covering every adult whale's body, the predator hunting the hunter, and the strange mystery scientists still cannot explain. If you enjoy this, subscribe and hit the bell. Brace yourself. We begin. Picture the deepest part of your local swimming pool. Now multiply that by 1,000. That is where the sperm whale goes to eat breakfast. A sperm whale is 60 feet long. That is roughly the length of 2 school buses parked end to end. It weighs over 100,000 pounds. Its skin is thick and tough, scarred from battles you cannot imagine yet. And every single day, this animal points its massive square head straight down and drops into a world that should kill it. The ocean has layers. The top layer, where sunlight hits and fish swim in schools, is the part we picture when we think of the sea. Below that, light starts to fade. By the time you reach 600 feet down, everything goes dark. Completely dark. No light at all. The pressure at that depth would crush an unprotected human body, like an empty soda can. The sperm whale ignores all of that. It dives past 600 feet, past 3,000 feet. Scientists have confirmed a recorded dive of 7,400 feet. That is deeper than 5 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. And some researchers believe the whale could physically survive depths approaching 9,800 feet, though nobody has confirmed that yet. Down there, the temperature drops close to freezing. The water presses in from every direction with a force that would flatten a submarine made of aluminum. The darkness is so total that your brain would have nothing to process. No shapes, no shadows, just black. And the sperm whale hunts in that. Here is what makes this stranger. The sperm whale is a mammal. It breathes air, just like you. It cannot pull oxygen from water the way a fish can. Every single dive starts with one last breath at the surface, and then the clock starts ticking. Scientists first tracked these dives using acoustic equipment because the whale makes sounds that travel enormous distances underwater. Researchers would listen for the click patterns and follow them. What they found was an animal descending at a rate of around 500 feet per minute, dropping steadily into the deep with no hesitation, no panic, like it had done this 10,000 times before, because it had. What drives something this large to go that far down that regularly? The answer is hunger, and the thing it hunts is something most people have never thought much about. At those depths, creatures live that science has only glimpsed in pieces. Not full living specimens caught on camera, but parts. A tentacle here, a beak there, evidence collected from the stomachs of the whales themselves. Whatever is living down there is large enough to scar a 60-foot animal permanently. Every adult sperm whale carries the marks. But before we get to the battles happening in the dark, you need to understand something about the whale itself, something about its body that makes this dive physically possible at all. Because the way it breathes, or more accurately, the way it does not breathe, during these dives breaks almost every rule we have about how mammals survive. The answer is buried inside the whale's own blood and muscle. And once you hear it, the dive starts to make a very different kind of sense. Look at a picture of a sperm whale, and the first thing you notice is the head. It is enormous, blocky, almost comically oversized compared to every other whale species. The head makes up 1/3 of the animal's entire length. On a 60-foot whale, that means roughly 20 feet of body is just head. Pure, dense, oil-filled head. For a long time, nobody understood why. Whalers who hunted these animals for centuries found the head filled with a strange waxy liquid they had never seen before. They named it spermaceti, which tells you a lot about how confused they were. They thought it was reproductive fluid. It was not. It was one of the most powerful biological sound systems ever discovered in nature. The organ inside the head works like this. The whale pushes air through a set of internal passages. Those passages lead to a structure called the monkey lips, which is exactly what it sounds like. Two fleshy pads that slam together and produce a click. That click travels back through the spermaceti oil and bounces off a reflective air sac at the rear of the head. The oil focuses the sound and fires it forward like a beam. The result is a click that reaches 230 decibels. To put that in context, a gunshot measures around 140 to 160 decibels. A jet engine at close range is around 140. A sperm whale click is roughly 10 times more powerful than that. It is the loudest sound produced by any animal on Earth. Scientists have confirmed this. These clicks travel through the water at nearly 1 mile per second. They hit a target, bounce back, and the whale reads the returning echo the way a bat reads the shape of a moth in the dark. This system is called biosonar, or echolocation. Bats use a version of it. Dolphins use a version of it. The sperm whale's version is in a completely different category. The detail it can pull from a returning echo is extraordinary. Scientists believe the whale can detect the size, shape, density, and movement of an object hundreds of feet away. It can tell the difference between a rock and a living creature, between a squid that is calm and one that is actively moving. Now here is the part that should make you uncomfortable. 230 decibels is enough to physically vibrate solid objects in the water nearby. Researchers who have gotten close to a clicking sperm whale reported feeling the sound move through their bodies, like a pulse, like something pressing against them from every direction at once. That is a sound you do not just hear, you feel it in your chest. Scientists are currently debating something that has never been confirmed. Some believe the whale can aim a focused burst of clicks at a squid and physically stun it, paralyze it before making contact. Turn the sonar into a weapon. The theory exists. The evidence is circumstantial. Researchers have found injured squids near hunting whales, but proving the sound did the damage is something nobody has managed yet. So for now, it stays in the theory column. What is confirmed is this. At some point during a dive, the steady rhythmic clicks change. They speed up. They tighten into a rapid buzzing pattern researchers call a creak. And when the creak starts, the whale is close. The target has been found. Something below the surface is about to have a very bad day. But to understand what that something is, you first need to know what happens to the whale's body on the way down. Hold your breath right now. Count to 10. Feel that tightness in your chest around 7 or 8. The sperm whale feels none of that. As the whale descends, pressure builds fast. Every 33 feet down adds the equivalent of 1 full atmosphere of pressure pushing in from every direction. At 7,000 feet, the pressure is over 200 times what you feel standing on land. At that depth, the air inside a human body would compress into a tiny fraction of its normal volume. Your lungs would collapse, your sinuses would crush inward. It would be fast, and it would be over. The sperm whale deals with this by doing something that looks, from the outside, like dying. Its ribcage is not rigid the way a human ribcage is. The ribs connect to the spine and sternum with flexible cartilage that allows the entire chest to collapse inward as pressure builds. The lungs compress almost completely. They do not rupture. They just shrink, flattening against the chest cavity while the whale keeps descending. Researchers confirmed this adaptation through imaging and by studying beached animals. The flexibility is real, and it is the reason the whale survives what should be fatal compression. But here is the problem. If the lungs collapse, where does the oxygen go? We will answer that in the next chapter. But the pressure issue is only part of what the body manages on the way down. The whale also deals with nitrogen. When humans dive deep and breathe compressed air, nitrogen dissolves into the blood under pressure. If they surface too fast, it forms bubbles in the bloodstream. Divers call it the bends. It can kill you in minutes. Sperm whales have been tracked surfacing after deep dives at speeds that would give any human diver fatal decompression sickness. Scientists spent years trying to figure out why the whales were fine. The answer turned out to involve the way the whale handles its blood flow during the dive. It actively redirects circulation away from areas that could absorb dangerous amounts of nitrogen and toward the organs that need oxygen most: the brain, the heart, the muscles powering the descent. This redirection happens automatically. The whale does not think about it. Its body manages it the way your body manages your heartbeat, behind the scenes, completely without effort. The heart rate also drops dramatically during the dive. In some marine mammals, the heart slows to just a few beats per minute during deep descents. Sperm whale heart rates during deep dives have not been perfectly measured yet, but based on related species, scientists believe something similar happens. Slowing the heart reduces how much oxygen the body burns. Every beat matters when there is no way to take another breath for the next hour. The descent takes about 10 minutes. The whale reaches hunting depth. It levels out in complete darkness, surrounded by freezing water, with a chest that has partially collapsed, a slowed heart, redirected blood flow, and no air in its lungs to speak of. And then it starts hunting. What it is hunting has hooks instead of fingers, and it has been waiting in the dark for a very long time. Every breath you take moves oxygen from your lungs into your blood. Simple enough. Sperm whales do something different, something that sounds impossible until you understand how it works. They store oxygen inside the tissue itself. The molecule responsible is called myoglobin. Your muscles contain it too, in small amounts. Myoglobin is what gives red meat its color. It holds onto oxygen and releases it when the muscle needs fuel. In humans, the concentration is low enough that it barely affects our diving ability at all. In sperm whales, the concentration is extraordinary. Researchers have found myoglobin levels in sperm whale muscle that are more than 10 times higher than in human muscle. The tissue is so packed with oxygen-binding protein that it appears almost black when fresh. A sperm whale's muscle does not look like the red meat you might picture. It looks closer to dark chocolate in color. What this means in practice is that when the whale takes that last breath and begins its descent, its blood and muscle are already loaded with oxygen. The lungs collapse under pressure and essentially stop functioning as the primary oxygen store. The whale then burns through its muscle reserves, slowly, efficiently for the entire length of the dive. Scientists who first realized this were stunned by the numbers. A human free diver can push toward 300 feet on a single breath if they are trained. An elite, world-class athlete working at the peak of human performance. A sperm whale casually does 7,000 feet on the same principle, but with a biological oxygen storage system that makes the human version look like a sandwich bag next to a fuel tank. The blood also plays a role. Sperm whale blood carries a higher concentration of red blood cells than most mammals. More red blood cells means more hemoglobin, which is the molecule in blood that binds and transports oxygen. The combination of supercharged blood and supercharged muscle creates a system where the whale carries its oxygen supply distributed throughout its entire body, not just sitting in its lungs. The 90-minute dive limit comes from how fast the whale burns through these reserves. It is not an arbitrary ceiling. It is the point at which the oxygen stored in blood and muscle runs too low for safe function. The whale knows this instinctively. Researchers studying dive patterns found that the whales almost never push past this time in normal conditions. They descend, hunt, and return before the reserves run critical. There is something almost mechanical about this. The whale arrives at the surface, loads the tanks, and descends. Every dive is a controlled burn of stored oxygen against time. When the reserves drop to a threshold, the whale turns and rises. What happens if something goes wrong on the way back up? If the hunt goes long and the whale pushes past its limit, Scientists believe the whale would become lethargic and disoriented at depth, rising slowly and instinctively. Whether this has happened in the wild is unknown. The deep ocean keeps its disasters private. Right now we know the whale can last 90 minutes. We know it stores oxygen in its own flesh. We know it descends without air in its lungs. But all of this setup, the collapse, the storage, the slow heart, serves one purpose: the hunt. And the hunt happens in darkness so complete that no light has ever touched it. 90 minutes is a long time to hold your breath. It is long enough to watch most action movies, long enough to drive 45 miles on the highway, long enough for a lot of things to go wrong a mile underwater, in total darkness. The sperm whale does this regularly. Confirmed. Scientists have tracked these dives with acoustic monitoring equipment and satellite tags attached to individual whales. The data came back, and the research teams had to check it twice. Animals this size, diving this deep for this long, on a single breath, and then surfacing and doing it again. To understand how extreme this is, compare it to the best human free divers alive. Trained athletes who spend years conditioning their bodies spend about 8 to 12 minutes underwater on a single breath in competition. The world record sits around 24 minutes, and that record was set by someone floating motionless at the surface in controlled conditions. A sperm whale beats that record while actively swimming, hunting, and fighting in pitch-black water a mile down. The dive itself follows a pattern that researchers pieced together from acoustic tracking. The whale descends steadily for around 10 to 15 minutes. At depth, it levels off and begins a search phase. This is where the clicking is most active. The whale sweeps the darkness with its sonar, listening for returning echoes that match the size and shape of prey. When it locks onto something, the click rate speeds up into the creak pattern. The hunt phase varies. Sometimes it is quick. A squid located, approached, and captured in minutes. Other times, researchers tracking whales heard the creak pattern sustained for extended periods, which suggests longer, more complex engagements. Something was happening down there that took time, something that resisted. After the hunt, the whale turns and ascends. The return trip takes around 10 minutes. At the surface, the whale breathes rapidly. The blow, the exhaled water vapor from its single nostril located on the left side of its forehead, shoots upward at an angle. The angle is distinctive enough that experienced observers can identify a sperm whale from the shape of its blow alone, angled forward and to the left, while every other whale species blows straight up. The whale rests at the surface anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes, breathing, reloading. Then the head tips downward. The massive tail lifts out of the water in a movement called fluking, a behavior seen when whales prepare for a serious deep dive. The flukes hang in the air for a moment. Then the animal slides beneath the surface and disappears again. From above the water, nothing looks dramatic. The ocean closes over the whale like it was never there. Below the surface, the clock starts again. Scientists studying sperm whale behavior noticed something else about these dive cycles. Whales in the same pod tend to dive on overlapping schedules. While some animals are down, others are resting or ascending. The pod maintains surface coverage, which keeps calves safer. The diving and surfacing happens in a kind of rotation that seems coordinated, though how the whales communicate this has not been fully explained yet. What is waiting at the bottom of every one of these dives is the reason the whole system exists, and what it looks like when scientists finally got even a glimpse of it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine complete darkness. No glow from a phone screen, no light seeping under a door, nothing. Now imagine navigating through that darkness at speed, tracking a moving target the size of a pickup truck. While the pressure around you is crushing, the temperature is near freezing, and you have not taken a breath in 40 minutes. The sperm whale does this with sound. The click system we introduced in Chapter 2 becomes the whale's entire sensory world at depth. Its eyes are functional, but they are useless in this environment. There is nothing to see. The only information available comes back as echo. Everything the whale knows about its surroundings, the shape of the seafloor far below, the movement of a creature 200 feet ahead, the texture of an object it has never encountered before, comes through sound returning to its lower jaw. The lower jaw is key. The sperm whale receives returning echoes not through its ears the way you receive sound. The jawbone itself acts as a receiver. It is filled with oil-rich tissue that conducts vibrations directly to the inner ear. The whale essentially listens with its face. Scientists studying this system found something remarkable. The sperm whale can apparently distinguish between objects of very similar size and shape. In experiments with captive dolphins, which use a related but much less powerful version of the same system, the animals could identify specific objects in murky water with accuracy that exceeded human vision in clear water. The sperm whale's system is orders of magnitude more powerful. What the whale builds from these returning clicks is something close to a three-dimensional picture of its environment. Scientists call this an acoustic scene. The whale moves through the dark building and updating this picture constantly, the way a phone updates a map as you drive. Except the phone gets its data from satellites. The whale gets its data from its own voice bouncing off the world. The range of the system is another thing that surprised researchers. In clear ocean water, sperm whale clicks have been estimated to reach prey targets at distances of over 1,000 feet. That is the length of 3 football fields, in total darkness, with enough returning information to tell the whale what it found. Now picture the click rate as the whale approaches. At long distance, clicks come maybe once per second. As the target gets closer, the clicks speed up, faster, tighter, until at very close range they blur into the creak, that rapid buzzing sound that means the whale has committed. The approach phase is over. Contact is coming. Researchers listening to deep-diving whales through hydrophones, which are underwater microphones, heard these sequences thousands of times. The transition from slow clicks to rapid creak always preceded a change in the whale's movement pattern. The animal accelerated, its path straightened. Whatever it had been tracking, it had now decided to take. Something in the deep had just been found. And what happened in the seconds after the creak, the actual moment of contact between a whale the size of 2 school buses and a creature with hooks on every arm, produced physical evidence that scientists still find disturbing to examine. The creak is the sound of a decision. Everything before it is searching, patient. Click after click sweeping through the dark like a lighthouse beam. But when the whale has found what it came for, something in the sonar pattern shifts. Researchers who first identified this change called the new sound a creak, because that is what it sounded like through underwater microphones. A rapid, high-frequency buzz that resembles a door hinge under pressure. The creak lasts anywhere from 1 to several seconds. During that time, the whale is closing fast on its target. Scientists confirmed this by tracking the whale's position acoustically and comparing it to where the creak sounds were recorded. Every time a creak was detected, the whale's path had straightened and its speed had increased. The search was over. The commit had happened. What the whale is targeting at this moment is alive, moving, aware that something large is approaching through the dark. The prey does not have sound equipment or sonar of its own. It detects the whale the way most deep-sea creatures detect threats, through pressure changes in the water. A creature that large, moving that fast, pushes a pressure wave ahead of it. Sensitive nerve endings along the skin of a squid can feel that wave. So the squid knows something is coming. It just cannot see what. And it cannot outswim it. Giant squid can jet through the water at speed by forcing water through a muscular tube called a siphon. Short bursts, powerful but not sustained. The sperm whale, for all its bulk, is faster over distance. The whale's tail flukes, each one wider than a pickup truck is long, drive it forward with a force that has no equal in the ocean. The creek builds, the distance closes. Scientists modeled this approach using the acoustic data from hundreds of tracked dives. They estimated that in the final seconds before contact, the whale is moving through total darkness with a precision that would embarrass most human technology. The target is locked. The jaw knows where to open. And then something almost no one has ever seen happens. The two animals meet. There are no cameras at 7,000 feet below the surface. There is no lighting equipment that would survive that pressure. The ocean keeps this moment private every single time. What researchers know about the encounter comes entirely from evidence found afterward, on the surface, on the whale's skin, and inside its stomach. That evidence tells a story of violence that surprises most people who first hear it. The sperm whale is the predator in this encounter. It goes down there specifically to eat, but the creature it hunts does not cooperate. It fights hard enough to leave marks that never fully heal, hard enough that every single adult sperm whale scientists have ever studied carries the proof of these fights across its body. The question that makes researchers stop and reconsider the whole story is simple. If the whale wins these encounters every time, why does it always look like it barely survived? The answer is wrapped in the biology of what lives down there. And what lives down there has been evolving in the dark for millions of years. You have probably seen a squid before. Small, translucent, maybe 8 inches long in a seafood display case. Forget everything that picture tells you. At 7,000 feet below the ocean's surface, the squid living in total darkness are built on a completely different scale. The giant squid, confirmed by scientists and studied through recovered specimens and rare footage, grows to lengths of around 40 feet. That is longer than a school bus. Its eyes are the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes of any animal on Earth, designed to catch the faintest possible trace of bioluminescent light in the deep. Scientists spent most of the 20th century debating whether giant squids even existed as described, because the only evidence was partial. A tentacle here, a beak recovered from a whale's stomach, dead specimens that washed ashore. The animal lived too deep, moved too fast, and was too aggressive toward anything that approached it. For researchers to study directly, the first confirmed video footage of a living giant squid in its natural habitat was not captured until 2004. Researchers had to lower a camera rig with bait attached deep into the Pacific Ocean, wait, and be patient for a very long time. When the footage finally came back, it showed an animal moving through the dark with a power and aggression that surprised the team watching the playback. And that is the giant squid. The colossal squid is a separate species entirely, and it changes the picture again. The colossal squid lives in the deepest parts of the Southern Ocean. Its body is heavier than the giant squids, built more like a tank than a torpedo. It reaches lengths of around 23 feet, shorter than its cousin, but it weighs up to 1,100 pounds. The giant squid is longer. The colossal squid is denser, stronger, and equipped differently. The arms of the colossal squid do not just have suckers. The suckers along the tentacles are lined with serrated edges that can cut into flesh the way a knife cuts into fruit. And in the middle section of each tentacle, instead of suckers, there are swiveling hooks. Actual rotating hooks embedded in the flesh of the arm. When a colossal squid grabs onto something, those hooks dig in and rotate, making it nearly impossible to pull free without tearing tissue. Scientists examining these hooks under magnification compared them to the kind of mechanism you might design if your only goal was to prevent escape. Now imagine one of these animals, or possibly both species in the same dive area, sitting in complete darkness, in water near freezing, 1 mile below the surface. Waiting, not for anything in particular, just existing, feeding on deep-sea fish, going about its life, and then far above, through the water, a pressure wave begins to build, getting stronger, moving downward, and ahead of it, a beam of clicking sound arriving from a mouth that weighs more than a car. The squid feels it. It knows something is coming, and what it does next is what leaves marks on every sperm whale alive. The colossal squid was officially described by scientists in 1925. For decades after that, almost nothing more was learned. A few partial specimens, a tentacle recovered from a sperm whale's stomach that was larger than anything previously catalogued. Evidence, but no living animal. The deep ocean was simply too far down and too hostile for any research team to access directly. Then, in 2023, something changed. Scientists from a research vessel lowered a camera system into the waters near Antarctica and captured the first confirmed footage of a juvenile colossal squid alive in its natural environment. It was roughly 1 foot long, barely out of the egg stage by squid standards, and it was already unmistakably different from every other squid species on film. The footage showed an animal that moved with a kind of slow, deliberate calm that surprised the scientists watching. Most squid are fast, reactive, jetting through the water in bursts. The juvenile colossal squid drifted, watched. The large eyes tracked the camera housing with what the team described as unsettling patience. An adult colossal squid has eyes up to 16 inches across. To picture that, hold both of your fists together side by side. That is roughly the width of a single eye. Scientists believe these enormous eyes evolved specifically to detect the faint glow of bioluminescent light produced by other animals in the deep, possibly including the approach glow created when the sperm whale's clicking disturbs organisms in the water ahead of it. The hooks on the colossal squid's arms are the detail that stays with researchers longest. Each hook sits in a socket and can rotate independently. When the animal grabs prey, the hooks dig in and spin, creating tears rather than punctures, wounds that open rather than seal. Scientists who examined the circular scars on sperm whales and then compared them to colossal squid anatomy found that the pattern matched exactly. But the colossal squid also has a weapon that is easy to overlook: the beak. Located at the center of the arm cluster, the beak is made of chitin, the same material as a crab shell, and it is curved like a parrot's beak, but scaled up to a size that can sever material with serious force. Scientists believe the beak of a large colossal squid could bite through the skin and blubber of a sperm whale if it found purchase. Whether this happens in actual encounters remains unknown. What is known is that these animals survive in an environment where the pressure, cold, and darkness would kill almost anything else on the planet. They evolved in that darkness. They are built for it. Every adaptation they carry, the hooks, the massive eyes, the heavy body, is calibrated for life at a depth humans still barely understand. The sperm whale hunts them anyway, every day, in the same darkness, using sound as its only light. And the evidence left on the whale's body when it returns to the surface tells a story about how those encounters go, a story that is permanently written into the skin of every adult sperm whale scientists have ever examined. Look closely at the skin of any adult sperm whale, and you will find the same thing. Circles, hundreds of them, some the size of a quarter, some as wide as a dinner plate, pale, raised rings pressed into the dark skin like stamps. Scientists call them sucker scars, and they cover the heads, flanks, and lower jaws of almost every adult sperm whale ever examined. Some individual whales have thousands of them. These marks come from squid, confirmed. The diameter of the circular scars matches the size of the suckers found on giant and colossal squid tentacles. Smaller circles appear on younger whales. The circles expand as the whale grows. A scar left when the animal was young stretches as the body gets bigger, so by the time the whale reaches full adult size, some of those marks have expanded to several times their original diameter. This detail matters. It means the whales are not just encountering squid occasionally, they have been doing it since they were young. The battles in the dark are a constant feature of a sperm whale's life, not a rare event. Researchers studying scar patterns on whale populations found something that complicated the simple story of predator and prey. The deepest, most severe scars were found on the heads and around the lower jaws of the whales. This is the area the whale would point directly at a squid during the final approach, the part of the body closest to the target at the moment of contact. The scars there are not just circular. Some are long slashes running 6 to 8 inches across the skin, the kind of wound a serrated sucker edge or rotating hook would leave when dragged across a surface under force. The squid fights back, hard, every time. Here is the part that flips the story slightly. The sperm whale is winning these encounters. We know this because it survives them and keeps hunting. The squid in its stomach proves it found what it came for. But winning apparently involves taking damage, serious damage, the kind that leaves marks for life. Scientists who study these scars have used them to answer questions about the squid that no camera has captured. By measuring the diameter of the largest scars and calculating the size of the squid that would produce them, researchers estimated that some of the animals being hunted are larger than the biggest squid ever recovered in full. The math suggests giants living at depth that nobody has seen yet. There is also a detail about the scratches found alongside the circular scars. Some of them run in parallel lines, 3 or 4 close together, consistent with the pattern of hooks arranged along a colossal squid tentacle dragged across a surface. The spacing of those scratches matched the hook spacing of the largest known colossal squid specimens, but some of the scratch patterns were wider than any recorded specimen. Something larger is down there, something that has left its signature on the bodies of sperm whales that scientists have been looking at for decades without quite realizing what they were seeing. What the actual fight between these two animals looks like, reconstructed from every piece of evidence available, is the story that comes next. 7,000 feet below the surface, total darkness, freezing water. Two animals that evolution spent millions of years building for this moment. The sperm whale arrives at depth, and the creek from its sonar has already locked onto the target. The approach is fast. The squid, feeling the pressure wave of something enormous closing in from above, fires its siphon jet and tries to accelerate away. It cannot outrun the whale over distance. Contact happens. From the physical evidence left on both animals, scientists reconstructed the sequence as best they could. The whale opens its lower jaw, the only jaw with teeth, and attempts to seize the squid's body. The squid simultaneously throws its tentacles forward, toward the whale's head. Those tentacles, lined with serrated suckers, and in the colossal squid's case with rotating hooks, make contact with the whale's skin and grip. Now both animals are attached to each other in complete darkness. The whale tries to pull the squid toward its jaw. The squid contracts its powerful body and pulls in the opposite direction. The hooks dig in deeper with the tension. The serrated suckers drag across the whale's skin. The whale shakes its head the way a dog shakes a toy, trying to break the grip or disorient the squid. The squid responds by wrapping additional arms tighter. Researchers examining the distribution of scars on whale heads found that the marks clustered most heavily around the areas where a squid would naturally grab during this kind of struggle. The top of the rostrum, the front of the head, the area around the lower jaw, exactly where you would expect if a large squid was reaching forward and gripping everything it could find in the dark while something tried to eat it. The encounter can last several minutes. Scientists know this from the acoustic data. In tracked dives where the creek pattern sustained for an extended period before stopping, researchers interpreted the sustained creek as an extended hunt engagement rather than a quick capture. Some of these extended creek sequences lasted over 2 minutes. 2 minutes of close-range combat in complete darkness at 7,000 feet underwater, with a squid that has hooks in its arms and a whale that has banana-shaped teeth in its lower jaw, is a long time for both animals. The whale eventually wins. The squid ends up in the stomach, but what the whale looks like when it surfaces, covered in fresh circular welts alongside older healed scars, tells you the squid made it pay for the meal. One thing researchers have never confirmed is whether the whale uses its sound as a weapon during the encounter. The sonic stun theory, the idea that a focused burst of clicks at close range could temporarily disable the squid, would explain why some captured squid show neurological damage before any physical bite occurs. But this remains a theory. Nobody has filmed it happening. Nobody has measured a focused burst during an actual capture event. The deep keeps that secret. For now, what nobody expected when researchers started compiling the full picture of the sperm whale's life was that the darkness below was not the most dangerous thing these animals faced. The danger that actually keeps them in tight pods, that drives their most coordinated survival behaviors, that kills their calves and exhausts their adults, comes from the surface. And it has teeth of a completely different kind. The idea started with a simple question. How does a whale with no hands catch a squid with 8 arms and 2 tentacles in total darkness? The jaw is the obvious answer, but researchers studying sperm whale feeding behavior ran into a problem. The lower jaw of a sperm whale is narrow relative to the animal's size. The teeth are banana-shaped and spaced wide apart. They are effective for gripping something that is already close, already somewhat subdued. They are less ideal for seizing a fast reactive animal in open water. Something about the math did not work. The squid is fast. The whale is large but not infinitely maneuverable at depth. The moment of capture in total darkness should be harder than the evidence suggests. The whales were clearly eating squid in enormous numbers, thousands of beaks accumulating in each stomach over a lifetime. But the mechanics of how they got them there kept nagging at researchers. Then one team started looking at something else, the click output during the final approach phase. Specifically what the creak sounded like when it was recorded at close range to a hunting whale versus a whale that was simply navigating. During navigation, the clicks were regular, spaced, and relatively even in intensity. During the hunting creak, the bursts were shorter, more focused, and at the tail end of the approach sequence, they appeared to concentrate into what the researchers described as a pulse, a very short, very intense acoustic event that preceded the moment of capture. 230 decibels, focused into a tight beam, fired at close range into the body of a squid. Scientists ran the physics. At that output level and that distance, the sound energy hitting the squid's body would be enormous. Sound does physical work at high intensities. It creates pressure variations inside tissue. It can disrupt the function of organs that depend on internal pressure, like a swim bladder in a fish, which regulates buoyancy through gas. A squid does not have a swim bladder, but it has a statocyst, a small organ that detects orientation and motion. It is filled with fluid. High-intensity sound passing through fluid can cause the fluid to vibrate in ways that impair the organ's function. Temporary disorientation, possibly paralysis for a fraction of a second. That fraction of a second might be all the whale needs. The theory has not been confirmed. No researcher has directly observed a sperm whale using focused sound to stun prey in the wild. The acoustic signatures that suggest the pulse exist in the data, but interpreting them as intentional stunning rather than a natural consequence of close-range echolocation is a step that requires more evidence. What makes the theory harder to dismiss is the consistency. Researchers from multiple independent teams, looking at data from different ocean basins, found similar acoustic signatures in the final seconds before capture events. The pattern repeats. Whether it is a deliberate behavior or a coincidental byproduct of the echolocation system becoming highly active at close range, the effect on the squid might be the same. For now, it stays in the theory column, but it is a theory with data behind it. And in the deep ocean, a theory with data is already more than most questions get. What is confirmed is what comes back up with the whale, and what accumulates inside a sperm whale over a lifetime of these dives is one of the most striking pieces of evidence for how often these hunts happen. The squid gets digested, almost all of it. The muscle dissolves, the skin breaks down, the organs process through. But one part of a squid is made of a material so tough that a sperm whale's digestive system cannot break it down at all. The beak. Squid beaks are made of chitin, the same material as a crab's shell or an insect's exoskeleton. Hard, dense, and chemically resistant. The beak sits at the center of the arm cluster and is the squid's primary tool for biting. It can sever tough material. In the colossal squid, it is large enough that researchers have compared it to the blade of a small axe. When a sperm whale eats a squid, the beak survives the entire digestive process. It passes into the stomach and stays there permanently. Over a lifetime of hunting, these beaks accumulate. Researchers opening sperm whale stomachs have found thousands of beaks packed together in a mass in the stomach chamber. One individual whale was found with over 18,000 squid beaks in its stomach. 18,000 squid from one animal over the course of its lifetime. That number gives a sense of how constant the deep diving is. A sperm whale does not hunt occasionally. Hunting is its full-time occupation. The dives, the creaks, the dark battles, the scars. This is what the animal's life actually consists of. The surface time is recovery. The real life happens below. The beak accumulation also gave researchers an unexpected research tool. Squid species have different beak shapes. The beak of a giant squid is distinct from the beak of a colossal squid, which is distinct from dozens of other deep-sea squid species. By cataloguing the beaks found in whale stomachs, scientists built a database of which squid species existed in which ocean regions, information they could never have gathered any other way because accessing those depths directly is nearly impossible. The sperm whale, without knowing it, has been collecting specimen records for scientists for millions of years. But the beaks created a second problem. The indigestible material builds up. In most cases, the whale expels it the normal way, but sometimes when a mass of beaks becomes too large and compacted, the digestive system surrounds it with secretions. The whale's body coats the mass layer by layer over years with a substance that slowly hardens into a waxy, dense, solid lump. That lump is called ambergris. Ambergris can weigh over 100 pounds in large formations. It is expelled by the whale and floats. It washes ashore. And for centuries, humans who found it on beaches had no idea what it was. It smelled faintly of the sea and something else, a deep, complex scent that perfumers discovered could fix other scents onto skin, making them last longer. The perfume industry has used ambergris for hundreds of years. A single pound, depending on quality, has sold for thousands of dollars. It has been described as the ocean's most expensive accident. It is technically a mass of squid beaks wrapped in whale digestive fluid. The whale produces it by hunting in the dark, every day, for decades. And what the whale hunts with, the tools it uses in the dark, are stranger than most people realize. The sperm whale has teeth only on its lower jaw. The upper jaw is smooth. This surprises people. Most animals with mouths built for seizing prey have teeth in both jaws working together. The sperm whale uses its lower jaw like a single jaw trap, swinging it open and snapping it shut, and the teeth in that lower jaw are unlike anything else in the ocean. They are shaped like bananas, curved, thick, and conical. Each one can grow to around 7 inches long and weigh up to 2 pounds. On a full-grown adult male, there are between 20 and 26 of these teeth, spaced along the narrow lower jaw in a row. Now look at the upper jaw. No teeth. Instead, there are sockets, pits in the gum tissue that correspond exactly to the position of each lower tooth. When the whale closes its mouth, the lower teeth slide perfectly into the upper sockets. The jaw locks together like a zipper. Scientists studied this arrangement and initially found it confusing. The design makes sense for gripping rather than chewing. The whale does not chew its food. It seizes it and swallows it whole. The curved teeth grip a slippery squid body and hold it while the powerful throat muscles pull it down. The upper sockets add a small amount of guidance, keeping the teeth aligned during the bite. But here is the detail that complicates the story. Many sperm whales with severely damaged or missing lower teeth, some with barely any functional teeth remaining at all, are found with full stomachs, healthy, well-fed, hunting successfully. This means the teeth, while useful, are not the primary capture mechanism. The whale is catching squid without them in some cases. This observation is part of what pushed researchers toward the sonic stun theory. If the whale can reliably catch fast-fighting squid without functional teeth, something else must be doing significant work in the capture sequence. What that something else is remains the subject of ongoing research. What is known is that the jaw itself is a weapon even without the teeth. The lower jaw of an adult sperm whale is massive. It can open wide enough to swallow a human being, though this has never happened as an attack on a living person in any documented case. When the jaw snaps shut, the force generated is enormous. Researchers have observed sperm whales using jaw snaps during defensive encounters with orcas, the sound carrying through the water like a crack of thunder. The jaw snap during defense is a last resort. The whale turns, opens its mouth wide, and slams it shut in the direction of the attacker. Against a squid, the same motion means capture. Against an orca, it means warning, and occasionally impact. The difference between offense and defense for this animal is sometimes just a matter of direction. Same weapon, different target. And the attacker that drives the sperm whale to use its jaw defensively, the predator that hunts the planet's loudest animal, that kills its calves and exhausts its adults, is something far more calculated than anything living in the dark below. For over 300 years, whalers hunted sperm whales for one thing above everything else: the oil inside the head. The spermaceti organ is the largest structure in the animal's head. In a full-grown male, it can weigh up to 30,000 pounds. It runs the entire length of the upper head, taking up most of the space in that enormous square skull. When the whalers cracked it open, they found it filled with a clear waxy liquid that congealed in cold air. They called it spermaceti and built an entire industry around it. Spermaceti oil burned with an exceptionally clean, bright flame. It was used in oil lamps, candles, and lubricants for industrial machinery at a time when no synthetic alternatives existed. The whaling industry that formed around this material was enormous, spanning 2 centuries and driving the sperm whale population close to collapse. And throughout all of it, nobody understood what the organ actually did. The name came from a mistaken belief about what the liquid was. Whalers who first accessed the organ thought they had found a reproductive gland. The biology was wrong, but the name stuck for centuries. Scientists later identified the liquid correctly as a specialized oil with unusual thermal properties and acoustic characteristics. But the functional purpose of the organ in a living whale kept being debated. The acoustic amplifier role is now well supported. The oil in the spermaceti organ conducts sound differently than the surrounding tissue. Sound fired from the monkey lips travels through this oil and is shaped, focused, and amplified before it exits the head as a directed beam. The organ acts as a biological lens for sound, but researchers studying the organ's other properties found something additional. The oil changes its density depending on temperature. Warmer oil is less dense and more buoyant. Cooler oil is denser and heavier. This is unusual, and the whale can control the temperature of the organ by pumping cool seawater through nasal passages running alongside it. The theory, which has significant evidence behind it, is that the whale uses this property for buoyancy control during dives. By cooling the oil and making it denser, the whale makes itself slightly heavier, helping it sink without burning energy. By warming it again during ascent, the whale regains neutral buoyancy. Scientists confirmed that the whale does flush seawater through the nasal passages during deep dives, exactly as this model predicts. The spermaceti organ might be 3 things at once: a sound amplifier, a buoyancy controller, and a battering ram. Some researchers propose that in disputes between male sperm whales, the massive square heads are used as weapons. Males sometimes turn and ram each other head-on during competition. The spermaceti organ, dense and oil-filled, may absorb the impact of these collisions without shattering the skull, like a built-in crash structure. 3 separate functions from one giant oil-filled head. And none of it was understood by the humans who harvested it for 300 years and nearly wiped the animal off the planet in the process. What the whale does when it is not diving is almost as strange as what it does when it is. Sperm whales sleep, obviously. Every animal needs sleep. The way they do it is the part that surprises people. A resting sperm whale does not lie on its side at the surface the way a human floats in a pool. It hangs vertically in the water column, head pointing straight up or straight down, completely motionless, like a massive dark pillar suspended below the surface. A group of resting sperm whales looks like a field of floating logs, all oriented the same direction, all completely still. Scientists first confirmed this behavior through direct observation in 2008, when a research team sailing in the Pacific Ocean came across a group of sperm whales that did not respond to the approaching vessel. The animals were vertical, not moving, not clicking. The team initially thought something was wrong with the animals. They were close enough to touch them before one whale finally became aware of the boat, and the group slowly began to move. The team had stumbled into a sleeping pod. Sperm whales sleep in short cycles. Researchers who subsequently tracked this behavior found that the animals enter their rest phase for periods of around 15 to 20 minutes at a time, near the surface, before waking and resuming normal activity. The total daily sleep time appears to be around 7% of their day, which works out to roughly 1 to 2 hours of sleep spread across 24 hours. This makes them one of the least sleeping mammals known to science. During the sleep phase, the echolocation clicks stop completely. The sonar goes silent. No creak, no navigation clicks. Just the sound of open water. For an animal that produces the loudest biological sound on Earth, the silence during rest is stark. This creates a vulnerability. A silent, motionless whale near the surface is exactly the kind of target that attracts attention. The animal cannot detect threats with its sonar when the sonar is off. It cannot maneuver quickly from a vertical position, and the ocean around it contains one predator that watches for precisely this kind of opportunity. But before we get to the attack that comes from above, there is something inside the sperm whale's skull that changes how you think about everything else in this story. Because this animal does not just have size and sound going for it. It has something that no other creature on Earth possesses in the same measure. A brain that weighs 20 pounds. The largest brain in the history of animal life on this planet. And what that brain does with the information it collects may be stranger than anything else we have covered so far. 20 pounds. That is the weight of a sperm whale's brain. To picture it, imagine picking up a car battery. That is roughly the size and heft of the largest brain nature has ever produced. No other animal, living or extinct, has been found with a brain that large. The human brain weighs around 3 pounds. A bottlenose dolphin's brain weighs around 3.5 pounds. An elephant's brain weighs around 11 pounds. The sperm whale blows past all of them and keeps going. Size alone does not mean intelligence in a simple way. A sperm whale's brain is larger partly because its body is enormous, and large bodies require larger neural systems to manage basic functions. But brain-to-body size ratio is not the only measure scientists use. The structure of the brain matters too. And the structure of the sperm whale brain revealed something researchers were not expecting. The neocortex is the region of the brain associated with complex thought, social behavior, language processing, and problem-solving in mammals. Humans have a highly developed neocortex. Dolphins have a surprisingly developed one given their body size. When researchers examined sperm whale brain tissue, they found a neocortex with a level of complexity and folding that put it in the same general category as dolphin and primate brains, adjusted for scale. They also found something called spindle neurons. These are elongated nerve cells associated with social bonding, emotional processing, and complex communication in humans. Spindle neurons were once thought to be unique to humans and great apes. Researchers found them in humpback whales, dolphins, and sperm whales. Confirmed. The presence of spindle neurons in a sperm whale raises questions that nobody has answered yet. What is this animal processing with that brain? What does a social bond feel like to a creature with spindle neurons and a 20-pound neocortex? What do the click sequences mean that travel between individuals in a pod, the patterns researchers call codas, that are consistent within a group and different between groups? Scientists studying sperm whale codas found that each pod has its own distinct set of click patterns, different rhythms, different timing, different combinations. The patterns are learned. Young whales acquire the coda patterns of their group over time, the way a child acquires language. Groups with different codas appear to avoid mixing, staying within their own acoustic community. Researchers gave these communities a name: clans. The sperm whale lives in clans, communicates in learned click dialects, maintains long-term social bonds, and does all of this with the largest brain any animal has ever carried. What this creature is actually thinking when it descends into the dark, when it fights in silence, when it surfaces and rejoins its pod, and the codas start again, is something science has only begun to approach. And the brain that holds all of this, that has been accumulating experience and social knowledge for decades, faces a threat. It has developed specific, coordinated strategies to survive. A threat that targets the young first, that exhausts the adults, and that comes from animals far smaller, but far more tactical than anything living in the deep. What hunts the hunter is coming in the next chapter. Something washes up on a beach in New Zealand. A fisherman finds it half buried in sand, pale and waxy, heavier than it looks. It smells strange. Not bad exactly. Just deep, old, like the ocean distilled into a solid block. He has no idea what he is holding, but it is worth more per pound than silver. Ambergris starts as a problem. The sperm whale swallows squid whole, and almost everything digests. Muscle, skin, organs, gone. But the beak is made of chitin, which no stomach acid touches. Beaks pile up in the whale's intestinal tract over years of hunting. When the accumulation grows large enough, the body responds. It coats the mass in secretions, layer by layer, the way an oyster coats a grain of sand. The layers harden slowly into a dense, waxy solid. Most of the time, the whale expels it. The mass passes out and floats. It drifts for years across ocean currents, oxidizing in sunlight and salt water. Fresh ambergris smells harsh and animal, but after years at sea, something changes in its chemistry. The harsh notes fade, and a complex, warm, almost woody scent develops underneath. That aged scent is what the perfume industry discovered centuries ago. Ambergris acts as a fixative. It binds other scent molecules to skin and slows their evaporation. A perfume with ambergris lasts significantly longer than one without it. Perfumers in medieval Europe were paying extraordinary prices for lumps of it without knowing where it came from. Some believed it was sea foam that had solidified. Others thought it fell from the sky. When whalers finally opened enough sperm whale stomachs to connect the dots, the source was confirmed. Ambergris is a digestive byproduct, a mass of squid beaks wrapped in layers of hardened intestinal secretion ejected by the whale and aged at sea. A single large piece can weigh over 100 pounds. One piece recovered in the early 2000s weighed close to 300 pounds. At peak market prices, that single lump was worth several $1 million. The whale produces it accidentally. It is a side effect of hunting thousands of squids over a lifetime. The animal has no awareness of the value. It surfaces, breathes, dives, fights in the dark, and occasionally, when the beak accumulation reaches a threshold the body cannot manage, it releases something that humans have killed each other over. The legal status of ambergris varies by country. In the United States, trade in ambergris is restricted under laws protecting marine mammals. In other countries, it is perfectly legal and openly sold. Beachcombers in certain coastal regions actively search for it, checking suspicious waxy objects with a heated needle, which releases that distinctive deep ocean scent if the sample is genuine. Scientists studying sperm whale digestion confirmed that the ambergris formation process can take years inside a living whale. The animal carries it for a long time before expelling it. Some researchers believe large masses that never fully pass may cause the whale discomfort, though this has not been definitively confirmed. An animal diving to 7,000 feet, fighting creatures with rotating hooks in total darkness, carrying a growing mass of indigestible squid beaks in its intestinal tract, and somehow still living for 60 to 70 years. The sperm whale's body handles more than most things on this planet are built to handle, and when it finally surfaces from all of that, what happens above the water is a social world more complex than most people expect. In the early 1980s, a group of researchers studying sperm whales in the waters near the Azores lowered themselves into the ocean near an active pod. One of them described what happened next as feeling the sound before hearing it. A click arrived through the water, not as a sound entering the ear from outside, but as a physical pressure moving through the body from every direction at once. The chest vibrated, the sinuses hummed. The researchers described it as similar to standing next to a massive speaker at full volume, except the sound was coming from inside them as much as from outside. 230 decibels does physical work on solid objects in the water. To understand this, consider what sound actually is. Sound is not just something your ears detect, it is a pressure wave moving through a medium. In air, these waves are relatively weak by the time they reach you from any normal distance. In water, sound travels faster and carries more energy over longer distances. At 230 decibels in water, the energy density of the sound wave is high enough to cause physical effects in nearby tissue. Researchers confirmed that the clicks of a sperm whale are audible, as in physically detectable, over distances of several miles in open ocean. Ships have picked up the sounds on hydrophone equipment at extraordinary ranges. The clicks are not just loud in the way a concert is loud, they are in a completely different category of sound output. For the divers near the Azores, the experience lasted as long as the whale continued clicking nearby. Some described mild disorientation. Others reported their vision briefly blurring, possibly from vibration in the fluid of the eye. None suffered lasting harm, but the physical sensation left an impression that shaped how the research community thought about the energy involved in these sounds. This observation fed directly back into the sonic stun debate. If the sound is powerful enough to physically affect a human diver at a distance, what does it do to a squid at close range during the hunting creek? When the sound is focused, the distance is feet rather than yards, and the burst intensity appears to peak. Scientists cannot say with certainty. The experiments that would confirm the stun effect would require controlled conditions that do not exist in the wild. Nobody is going to 7,000 feet with a pressure sensor to hold next to a squid during a sperm whale attack. What researchers could do was model it. Using the known output of the whale, the acoustic properties of ocean water at depth, and the known physiology of squid, they calculated the energy hitting a squid at close range during a hunting creek. The numbers were large enough to place the effect firmly in the plausible range. Plausible. Supported by direct observation. The whale continues to hunt. The math continues to suggest something interesting is happening at the moment of contact, and the evidence written on the whale's body tells a story of encounters that are violent enough regardless of what the sound does. The real protection the whale gets from its sound is not against squid, it is something different entirely, because the same clicks that map the dark also serve as a warning system for the greatest threat the sperm whale faces, and that threat is already assembling at the surface. A sperm whale calf is born into noise. The pod surrounds the birth. Adults cluster close. The clicks and codas of multiple whales fill the water from every direction. The newborn, already 12 feet long, emerges into a world of constant acoustic contact. Before it can process much of anything else, it begins learning the specific click patterns of its group. Sperm whale society is built around the female pod. Adult females and their calves travel together in stable groups that can range from a handful of animals to over 20. These pods stay together for years, decades. The bonds between females in a pod appear to be long-term. Researchers tracking specific individuals across years found the same animals traveling together consistently. Their acoustic signatures, the individual coda patterns, recognizable to scientists with enough recordings, present in the same group over long periods. The females and calves occupy the upper ocean layers. They dive, but rarely to the extreme depths the adult males reach. Their hunting happens in shallower water, targeting smaller squid species. The social structure of the pod centers on the calves, which require years of care before they can hunt independently. Male sperm whales live differently. Young males leave the female pod around age 6 and join loose groups of other young males. They gradually move toward colder, deeper waters as they age and grow. Old adult males travel alone, covering enormous distances, appearing at female pods during breeding season, and then departing again. The largest males can weigh twice as much as females and dive significantly deeper. The pod structure creates something important for survival. Calves cannot be left alone. A calf at the surface with no adults nearby is an exposed target. The adults in the pod maintain a watch rotation during diving. While some females descend to hunt, others stay close to the calves. The rotation is not perfectly timed or perfectly coordinated, which creates gaps. And something at the surface has learned to watch for exactly those gaps. Researchers studying sperm whale pod behavior also documented something called alloparenting, where females other than the calf's mother will nurse, guard, or remain close to a calf that is not their own. In some observed cases, females without calves of their own took active roles in calf protection. The pod functions as a collective parenting unit to a degree that surprised researchers who initially expected more individualistic behavior. The codas between pod members carry information that scientists are still learning to interpret. Certain patterns appear before a dive, others appear when the group is moving versus resting. During stress events, the acoustic output of the pod changes noticeably in ways that researchers have not fully decoded. What is clear is that the pod is a survival structure. The individuals in it are more likely to live, and their calves are more likely to survive than isolated animals. The bonds and behaviors that make the pod function have been refined over millions of years of evolution. They need to be, because what they are defending against is coordinated, intelligent, and extremely good at finding the weakest point in any defense. The sperm whale is the loudest animal on Earth. It is 60 feet long. It weighs 100,000 pounds. It fights giant squid in the dark and wins. Orcas hunt it anyway. Orcas are around 20 to 26 feet long. They weigh between 8,000 and 12,000 pounds. A large male orca is roughly 1/10 the mass of an adult female sperm whale. By raw size, this matchup should not work. By intelligence, coordination, and patience, it does. Orca pods that hunt sperm whales are documented in multiple ocean regions. Researchers studying these encounters described a predation strategy that looks, in its structure, closer to a military operation than a wildlife event. The orcas do not rush the whale pod. They approach slowly. They test the response. They probe. The sperm whale pod detects the orcas acoustically well before visual contact. The clicking changes. The codas shift. Adults close around the calves. The pod tightens. On the surface, the movement looks calm. Below it, the acoustic environment is active with communication. The orcas begin their separation strategy. Their goal is to isolate a calf or a weakened adult female from the main group. They use coordinated swimming patterns to create confusion, moving in multiple directions around the pod simultaneously. Some researchers who observed these attacks compared it to watching a team execute a play. The orcas communicated with each other constantly. Their calls changed based on what the sperm whales did. The strategy adjusted in real time. Individual orcas take turns approaching and biting. They aim for soft tissue, the lips, the tongue, the genital area, the space around the pectoral fins. The bites are not killing strikes. They are designed to exhaust and weaken. The orca bites and pulls back before the sperm whale can respond effectively with its jaw or tail. Then another orca moves in, then another. The strategy runs on stamina. The orcas know the sperm whale is large. They do not try to overpower it quickly. They wear it down over hours. Researchers observing documented attacks found that encounters between orcapods and sperm whale groups sometimes lasted 3 to 5 hours before an outcome was reached. 3 to 5 hours of sustained rotating attack. The sperm whale adults defend. They call. They maneuver. And the orcas keep coming. What makes this more disturbing is that orcas pass these hunting strategies to their offspring. Calf orcas have been observed participating in the outer edges of sperm whale attacks, watching the adults execute the pattern, learning it. The strategy is cultural. It is taught. It is refined across generations. The sperm whale's deep diving ability, its sonar, its size, its teeth, none of these tools were built to counter a coordinated multi-animal surface attack by animals that can match its intelligence. The orca found the gap in the whale's defenses and built a tradition around exploiting it. But the sperm whale did not evolve without a response. Over millions of years, the pod developed a counter-strategy, one that turns the whale's greatest physical liabilities into a coordinated defense. It forms a shape, and that shape has a name. The attack begins with surveillance. Orcapods that regularly hunt sperm whales are not improvising. Researchers who tracked the same orca groups across multiple years found that certain pods returned to the same hunting grounds during the same seasons, year after year. They knew where the sperm whale pods would be. They had hunted there before. The knowledge passed from older animals to younger ones. When the orca pod locates a sperm whale group, the first phase is observation. The orcas hold position at a distance. They watch the surface activity of the sperm whales. Who is diving? Who is resting? Where the calves are? How tight the adult formation is. Scientists recording these pre-attack phases noted that the orcas remained almost completely silent during this surveillance period. The regular clicks and calls of a traveling orca pod went quiet. The animals communicated in low, tight vocalizations that carried only short distances. Researchers interpreted this as deliberate acoustic discipline, reducing the warning given to the sperm whales before the attack began. The attack phase opens with a rush. Multiple orcas accelerate toward the pod simultaneously from different angles. The goal of this initial rush is panic, not contact. The sperm whales scatter slightly before their defensive instincts pull them back into a tight formation. In the moment of scattering, the orcas are reading the group, looking for the calf, looking for the oldest female, looking for whatever target is most isolated. Once a target is identified, 2 or 3 orcas focus on it specifically, while the rest keep the adult pod occupied. The focused group begins the bite and retreat cycle. One orca darts in, bites, and pulls back before the target can respond. While the target reacts to the first attacker, a second has already positioned for the next approach from a different angle. The sperm whale being targeted cannot watch all directions at once. It cannot respond to threats from multiple angles simultaneously. It is large and powerful, but not fast in short bursts. Each bite opens a small wound. Each wound costs blood. Over the course of hours, the cumulative blood loss and physical exhaustion begin to compound. The adults in the main pod face a problem during this. Moving to protect the targeted animal requires them to break their own defensive formation. If they move to assist, they expose the remaining calves. If they hold, the targeted animal is left partially alone. Researchers observed both decisions across different recorded attacks. Both had costs. Documented attacks that resulted in confirmed kills almost always involve the successful isolation of a calf. The calf is smaller, slower, and cannot sustain the bite and retreat cycle as long as an adult. Once separated from the pod by more than a short distance, the outcome was rarely reversed. In some observed cases, adult females returned to the surface during an active attack to find a calf already separated and surrounded. The recordings of the pod's acoustic output during these moments showed a change in the coda patterns that researchers described as unlike anything else in their data. Whether that represents something like distress in the emotional sense is a question science cannot currently answer. What the pod does next, the physical formation it assumes during an attack, is the closest thing in the animal kingdom to a military defensive structure. The sperm whale pod detects the orcas. The acoustic environment shifts, and then the adults do something that researchers, when they first documented it clearly, compared to watching a military unit execute a practiced drill. The whales form a circle, specifically a tight circle with their heads pointing inward toward the center and their tails pointing outward in every direction. The calves move to the center of the circle, surrounded on all sides by adult bodies. The adults face each other, watching the protected space. Their tails, each one spanning over 15 feet wide and capable of generating thousands of pounds of force in a single stroke, point outward toward the approaching threat. Scientists named this the Marguerite Formation, after the French word for daisy, because viewed from above, the ring of whales with outward-pointing tails resembles a flower with thick petals. The logic of the formation is simple and effective. A tail strike from an adult sperm whale can kill. A direct hit from those flukes generates enough force to break bones in most animals. By pointing the tails outward, every adult whale in the circle becomes a defensive weapon facing the threat. To reach a calf, an orca has to pass through a wall of swinging tail flukes and close enough to snap jaws. The formation also addresses the multi-angle attack problem. With adults forming a continuous ring, there is no undefended approach direction. An orca approaching from any angle faces tails. The whales rotate slightly to track approaching threats, keeping the most active orca covered by the nearest flukes. But the Marguerite Formation has a flaw, a significant one. The adults in the circle cannot dive. Their tails are pointing outward, at the surface. Their heads are facing inward and down. To hold the formation, they have to stay at the surface, stationary. They cannot use their greatest survival tool, which is the ability to dive far below where orcas can follow. This is what the orcas exploit. The bite and retreat cycle continues against the formation. The orcas target the sides and tops of the whales holding the circle, biting and retreating before tail strikes can land. Each bite lands somewhere on the body. Each one costs energy. The whales holding the formation are burning oxygen at the surface while under sustained attack. They cannot dive to hunt. They cannot eat. They are simply enduring. Against a short orca attack, the formation holds. The orcas exhaust their strategy and retreat. The calves survive. Against a sustained attack by a large and experienced orca pod, the endurance test becomes serious. Researchers documented attacks lasting over 3 hours against a pod holding the Marguerite Formation. The whales held, but the physical cost was visible in the behavior of the pod in the hours following. Rest cycles were longer, dives were shallower. The animals recovered slowly. In the most severe cases, the formation broke. And when it broke, the outcome changed completely. What happens when the circle fails is documented in the research, and it is not something that leaves the observer unaffected. The circle held for 2 hours. Researchers on a vessel off the coast of California watched through binoculars and camera equipment as a pod of sperm whales maintained the Marguerite Formation against a group of orcas that had been circling and biting since. Mid-morning, the footage exists. The transcripts of the acoustic monitoring exist. What happened at the 2-hour mark is recorded. One adult female on the outer ring of the formation began to drift slightly. Her tail strokes slowed. The bites she had absorbed over the previous hours had opened wounds across her flanks and near her pectoral fins. The blood in the water around the pod had been visible for over an hour. Her position in the circle developed a gap. The orcas noticed within seconds. 2 orcas broke from the circling pattern and drove hard toward the gap. The female tried to close it, swinging her tail to cover the opening. The orca split, one taking the tail strike and the other driving past her into the interior of the circle. Chaos broke out in the pod. The formation dissolved as adults turned to address the orca that had penetrated the ring. In the confusion, a calf separated from the interior. The separation lasted less than a minute before 2 adult females drove between the calf and the orcas, pushing it back toward the remaining adults. The main pod reformed in a looser version of the marguerite. The orcas pulled back slightly, reassessing. The attack continued for another 40 minutes. The researchers on the vessel lost visual contact when the pod moved into lower visibility water. The acoustic monitoring continued for another hour before the orca calls ceased and the sperm whale coda pattern shifted back toward what the research team recognized as normal travel sounds. They did not know the final outcome of that attack. In cases where researchers had full documentation of a completed attack, confirmed calf deaths accounted for the majority of successful orca predation events. Adult female deaths were documented, but rarer. Adult males, who are significantly larger and stronger than females, were almost never the primary target. The orcas calculate. They go for the target most likely to yield a result within the energy budget of the attack. A calf requires less total effort. A weakened adult female costs more effort, but is more nutritionally significant. A healthy adult female requires effort that may exceed the return. A large adult male is almost never worth the attempt. Scientists examining historical records found that sperm whale calves in regions with active orca populations showed higher mortality rates than calves in regions where orca predation pressure was lower. The orca is not an occasional threat. In certain ocean regions, it is a consistent recurring pressure that shapes sperm whale behavior, social structure, and the marguerite formation itself. Evolution shaped the formation because the orca shaped the selection pressure. Every whale born with a stronger instinct to hold the circle survived more often. Over generations, the formation became part of the species. But the sperm whale did not develop only one defense. The next one, the response that orca pods apparently find most disorienting, involves something you would never expect a 60-foot predator to use as a weapon. When the orcas press the attack hard enough, some sperm whales do something that sounds almost comic until you understand the scale of it. They release an enormous cloud of reddish-brown waste material directly into the water around the pod. The volume involved is not small. Sperm whales produce waste at a scale matching their body size. A full release creates a cloud that can spread across a wide area around the pod, visibly discoloring the water. Researchers and vessel observers who documented this behavior described it as suddenly sailing through a vast, dense, opaque cloud in the ocean. The effect on the orcas is documented and real. Orca attacks that encountered a large defecation cloud showed a marked reduction in organized behavior. The orca pods broke from their coordinated approach patterns. Individual orcas swam erratically within the cloud. The multi-directional coordination that makes orca predation so effective appeared to degrade. The reason comes down to sensory interference. Orcas rely on echolocation and acute smell to coordinate during an attack. A dense cloud of waste material in the water around the prey interferes with both systems simultaneously. The acoustic signals the orcas use to communicate and track targets become harder to interpret when the water around them is filled with particles and biological material. The chemical signals that guide their approach become overwhelmed. The sperm whale does not aim. It releases into the water it and its pod members are occupying. The adults and calves at the center of the cloud have the cover of the disruption around them, while the orcas at the outer edges lose their coordination. Scientists studying this behavior found that the release appears to be a stress response rather than a fully voluntary tactical decision. The biological mechanism triggered by extreme fear or threat causes the release, and the defensive effect is a fortunate consequence of that mechanism. Whether the whales have any awareness that it helps them is unknown. What is known is that the timing of documented defecation clouds correlated with moments of peak attack intensity. The behavior emerged when the orca pressure was highest, when the orca coordination was tightest, and the threat to the calves was most acute. Whatever triggers the response, the timing serves the pod. In some documented cases, the orca attack slowed or halted after a large defecation cloud event. In others, the orcas reorganized after several minutes and resumed. The defense buys time. It does not guarantee survival. Combined with the marguerite formation, the jaw snaps and the tail strikes. It forms part of a layered defensive system that has evolved over millions of years of being hunted by one of the ocean's most intelligent predators. But all of these defenses operate at the surface, and there is one escape the orca cannot follow. The sperm whale knows this. When the attacks become too sustained and the defenses begin to fail, the animal falls back on the same ability it uses to hunt. It goes down. The calf is always the priority target. This is not accidental. Orca pods that hunt sperm whales have refined their strategy over generations of trial and error, and the data from observed attacks is consistent. The calf represents the best return on energy invested. Smaller, slower, less capable of sustained defense, and surrounded by adults who face an impossible choice when the calf is threatened. A sperm whale calf at birth is already around 12 feet long and weighs close to a ton. By human standards, it is enormous. By orca standards, it is manageable. The calf cannot generate the tail strike force of an adult. Its skin is thinner, it tires faster, and it requires air at the surface regularly, which limits its ability to dive away from a threat even partially. Researchers studying orca attack patterns in multiple ocean regions found that calf targeting was consistent across different orca populations that had independently developed sperm whale predation strategies. Populations in the Pacific and populations in the Atlantic, separated by thousands of miles and with no contact with each other, arrived at the same target selection logic. Calves first. This convergence tells scientists that the strategy is not cultural coincidence. It is the optimal approach that any sufficiently intelligent predator would reach given the constraints. The adult female response to a threatened calf is powerful and consistent. Females move between the calf and the attacking orcas immediately. Researchers documented females sustaining severe bite wounds from orca attacks while shielding calves, continuing to hold their position between the calf and the threat even after taking damage. In several recorded cases, females positioned over the calf's body at the surface, using their own mass as a physical barrier. The cost of this protection is that the female exposing herself to attack while shielding the calf becomes the secondary target. The orcas shift focus. They bite the female. She absorbs it. She holds. The calf stays covered. This dynamic sometimes runs to exhaustion. A female who has spent several hours absorbing attacks while shielding a calf may be too injured and depleted afterward to hunt effectively. Researchers found some females in regions of high orca predation with scar patterns consistent with repeated orca bite wounds layered on top of each other across multiple encounters. Over years, the calves that survive these encounters carry something with them beyond survival. They were inside the circle. They heard the acoustic changes in the pod around them. They experienced the formation and the chaos when it was under stress. Researchers believe these early experiences shape the calf's own defensive behavior later in life. Animals that survive early predation attempts show faster and more instinctive defensive responses as adults in subsequent encounters. The orca shaped the sperm whale. The sperm whale adapted. And somewhere in that adaptation, in the formation, the acoustic warning systems, the alloparenting structure, the layered defenses, is the signature of a predator-prey arms race that has been running for millions of years. Both animals got smarter because of each other. The weapon the sperm whale has that the orca cannot counter is still the depth, and how the whale uses that depth, not just for hunting but for escape, is the final piece of the defensive picture. The sperm whale pod is never quieter than during a normal rest period, and it is never louder than during an orca attack. Researchers who recorded acoustic data during confirmed orca predation events found that the vocal output of the sperm whale pod changed dramatically the moment the orcas were detected. The steady, spaced clicking of a resting or traveling pod gave way to a dense, overlapping burst of sound from multiple animals simultaneously. The codas shifted. The patterns became shorter, more rapid, and the intervals between clicks compressed. Scientists comparing normal pod vocalizations to attack phase vocalizations found clear differences in the acoustic structure. The changes were consistent across multiple recorded attack events in different ocean regions, which suggests the shift is a coordinated response, a real-time communication change driven by the threat. What the whales are saying to each other during these moments is not yet decoded. Researchers can identify that the patterns change. They can see that different individuals in the pod adjust their acoustic output at roughly the same time. They can observe that the changes happen before the orca contact becomes physical, meaning the whales are acoustically responding to the approach, not just to the first bite. Some researchers studying sperm whale codas proposed that specific patterns heard during attack phases represent something functionally equivalent to alarm calls. The same patterns appeared consistently at the onset of orca encounters, across different pods in different regions. An alarm call in biology is a vocalization that communicates the presence of a threat to nearby individuals. If the coda patterns serve this function, the sperm whale has a threat-specific communication system embedded in its social acoustic structure. What is also confirmed is that the acoustic environment created by a large, alarmed sperm whale pod is overwhelming for everything else in the water nearby. Multiple animals producing clicking sequences simultaneously at high volume creates a sound field that is effectively a wall of noise. Whether this wall serves a defensive acoustic function against the orcas, who also rely on sound for coordination, is a question researchers have raised but not confirmed. What the orcas hear when they approach an alarmed sperm whale pod is a barrage of sound from every direction, produced by animals capable of outputs that physically vibrate solid objects in the water. Whether this disrupts orca coordination the way a defecation cloud disrupts their sensory systems is a theory that exists in the literature. There is another acoustic event documented during attacks that had no clear explanation when researchers first encountered it. At certain moments during long attacks, a single animal in the pod would produce a prolonged burst of clicks at a volume and character distinct from the surrounding acoustic chaos. Isolated, intense. The orcas in several documented cases paused their coordination briefly when these bursts occurred. Weapon. Communication. Coincidence. Scientists filed it in the same column as the sonic stun theory. Plausible. Interesting. Unconfirmed. The whale's voice shaped this entire story from the beginning. It found the squid, it mapped the dark, it filled the stomach, and built the pod. And at the moment of greatest threat, it does something that science has not fully explained yet. What happens when the voice goes silent is the next question, and the answer involves the one escape the orca can never follow. The jaw snap is not subtle. Researchers who have been on vessels during close encounters with sperm whales under threat describe the sound of a jaw snap carrying through the hull of the boat as a crack, sharp, physical, like a bat hitting a hard surface. Underwater, the sound carries much farther. Researchers with hydrophones in the water during encounters recorded jaw snaps at distances where they could no longer see the whale directly. The lower jaw of an adult male sperm whale is around 16 feet long. It opens wide, swings down, and slams shut with the force of muscles that evolved to seize large prey in the dark. The snap generates a pressure wave in the water that the orca can feel before any physical contact is made. During orca encounters, sperm whales use jaw snaps as a warning behavior. The whale turns toward an approaching orca, opens the lower jaw wide, and then snaps it shut. The visual display showing the full length of the jaw lined with banana-shaped teeth, combined with the auditory and pressure impact of the snap, creates a threat signal that even experienced orcapods respond to with caution. Researchers documented cases where an orca pulled back immediately after a jaw snap directed at it. The snap did not connect. No physical contact occurred. The sound and pressure wave alone caused the orca to break its approach. In a coordinated attack with multiple animals, losing even one attacker's momentum for several seconds can allow the targeted whale time to reposition or close a gap in the formation. Confirmed physical contact between sperm whale jaws and orca bodies is rarer in the documented record, but it has been observed. In several encounters, researchers noted that an orca broke from the attack pattern and moved away from the pod with altered swimming behavior, suggesting it had absorbed a strike. One orca observed leaving a sperm whale attack scene was moving with a list, favoring one side, consistent with a significant impact. An orca hit directly by an adult sperm whale's jaw, snap at close range would absorb a force capable of breaking bones. The problem is accuracy. The orcas know the jaw is coming when it is aimed at them. They are fast. They maneuver. The whale is large and less agile in short bursts. The jaw snap works best as a deterrent, as a warning that raises the cost of approach, not as a precision strike. Combined with the tail flukes, the Marguerite formation, the defecation cloud, and the acoustic chaos of an alarmed pod, the jaw snap is one layer in a defense that works, when it works, through accumulated deterrence. Each defensive behavior raises the cost of the attack slightly. The orcas calculate whether the cost of continuing is worth the expected return. Most of the time, against a healthy adult pod, the math eventually turns against the orcas, and they withdraw. Against a stressed pod, a depleted formation, a separated calf, the math runs the other way. The final tool the sperm whale has against the orca is the one it uses for everything else in its life, and the orca, for all its intelligence and coordination, cannot follow it there. An orca can dive. Orca maximum dive depths, confirmed through satellite tagging of individuals, reach around 800 to 1,000 feet in exceptional cases. Most orca hunting and normal behavior happens in the top few hundred feet of water. Orcas are built for speed and coordination in the upper ocean layers. Their bodies are not adapted for the pressure found in deep water. A sperm whale can reach 7,000 feet. The gap between those two numbers is the sperm whale's ultimate survival advantage. When an orca attack reaches a threshold that the pod cannot sustain defensively at the surface, the adult whales have an option the orcas do not. They can leave, not horizontally, vertically. Researchers tracking sperm whale behavior during and after orca encounters found that some pods, when the attack pressure became severe, shifted their response from defensive formation to coordinated descent. The adults with the calves positioned between them began moving downward together, staying close, maintaining the acoustic contact of their click patterns as they went. The orcas followed to a depth. The data from tagged animals in documented encounters shows the orca pursuit extending down a few hundred feet before the orcas turned back. Whether this limit is physiological, the pressure becoming uncomfortable, or tactical, the sperm whales now moving faster than the orcas could match in their preferred direction is not fully established. What is established is that once the sperm whales passed a certain depth threshold, the orcas returned to the surface. The attack ended. This creates something interesting about the sperm whale's extreme diving ability. Scientists originally studied the deep dives purely in the context of hunting. The whale goes deep because the squid are deep. That is the primary driver. But the same ability that puts food in the whale's stomach also puts it beyond the reach of the only predator that threatens it. The deep ocean is simultaneously the hunting ground and the refuge. The thing the whale descends toward and the thing it descends to escape toward serve opposite purposes but use the same tool. The diving anatomy, the collapsed ribs, the myoglobin-loaded muscle, the slow heart, the 90-minute breath hold, all of it enables both survival strategies through one biological system. Evolution did not build these features twice, it built them once, and the whale found two uses for them. Calves, who cannot yet reach extreme depths, remain the vulnerability in this escape. A calf too young to dive deep enough stays near the surface even as adults descend. The orcas know this. The calves they successfully separate during the chaotic moment of a pod attempting descent are exactly those who cannot follow the adults down fast enough. The depth is safety, but it is safety the calf has to grow into. And in the years before a young whale reaches full diving ability, the surface world remains dangerous, in a way the deep never quite is. One last question hangs over everything the sperm whale encounters in the dark below, and it is a question that changes the entire framing of the story. Adult sperm whales carry two completely different sets of marks on their bodies. Scientists who study these animals have learned to read them like a map of the whale's life history. The squid scars are circular. They cluster on the head, around the lower jaw, and across the front of the body, the areas that lead during a dive and make first contact with prey. The circles range from coin-sized on younger animals to dinner plate wide on old adults, where a childhood scar has stretched across growing skin. Some have the parallel scratch lines alongside them, the signatures of hooks dragged under tension. The squid scars sit on the parts of the body that enter the dark first. The orca scars look different. They are longer, crescent-shaped or elongated, consistent with the curved tooth shape of an orca bite. They appear on the flanks, the pectoral fins, the tail stalk, the lips, and the area around the genitals, which are the same soft tissue zones that orca attack strategies specifically target. The orca scars are often grouped in clusters of parallel marks, left when multiple teeth make contact simultaneously, and they tend to appear on the sides and rear of the body rather than the front. A scientist examining a sperm whale can look at the scar distribution and reconstruct, in broad terms, which battles were fought where. Clusters of circular scars forward and on the head mean active repeated engagement with squid at depth. Crescent marks along the flanks and tailstock mean the whale has survived orca attacks at the surface. An animal with heavy scar loads in both regions has been fighting on two fronts for its entire adult life. Researchers have used this scar mapping to identify individual whales across years. The pattern of marks is unique enough to serve as a fingerprint. Scientists recognize the same animal appearing in different locations months or years apart by matching the specific arrangement of old scars and comparing them to new images. This technique also revealed something about the timeline of orca attacks. Orca scars appear most heavily on the flanks of middle-aged females, the animals most likely to have been holding a defensive formation position during attacks on pods containing calves. The oldest females often showed lighter orca scar loads, which researchers interpreted carefully. The oldest animals had survived. The ones with the heaviest unhealed orca damage from repeated attacks may not have. The squid scars, by contrast, increase steadily with age across all animals. Every year of diving adds more marks. An old male with decades of deep hunting behind it might have hundreds of circular scars layered across each other on its head, some stretched to enormous size, forming a texture across the skin that researchers described as resembling cobblestones. The whale's body is a record. Every scar is a confirmed encounter. Every healed circle is a dark battle that ended with the whale swimming up from the deep, bloody and intact. Every crescent along the flank is a surface attack survived. The record is long. The whale has been fighting since it was young, and in all of that fighting, one question about the creatures in the dark has never been settled. The story so far runs one direction. The whale goes down, The whale finds the squid defends itself. The whale wins. But some researchers have started asking whether the direction is always that clean. Confirmed, adult sperm whales are the aggressors in encounters with squid. They dive to hunt. The squid are prey. The evidence from stomach contents and scar patterns is consistent with this picture. The open question is whether very large squid, specifically large colossal squids, ever initiate contact with young or weakened whales, rather than simply defending against them. The data that raised this question came from examining the scar patterns on juvenile and subadult sperm whales. Younger animals, not yet at full size and not yet capable of diving to the extreme depths large squid inhabit, showed circular scarring that in some cases appeared on parts of the body inconsistent with a hunting approach. The marks were on the flanks and the rear of the body, regions that lead the attack would not normally expose first. A scar on the side of a young whale's body could mean the whale twisted during a defensive encounter with squid. It could mean the squid grabbed in an unexpected position during the struggle. These are the most straightforward explanations, and they fit the existing hunting model. But some researchers proposed a different reading. If a very large colossal squid encountered a small or weakened juvenile sperm whale near the mid-depth zones where their ranges might overlap, and the squid was hungry, what would happen? Colossal squids are predators. They actively hunt fish and other squid. A disabled or young whale near their habitat would represent a substantial meal. No confirmed documentation of a squid-initiated attack on a living whale exists. This is squarely in the unknown column. But the debate exists in the scientific literature, and the scar pattern anomalies on juvenile whales have not been fully explained by the standard hunting model. The colossal squid's biology makes the question harder to dismiss than it might seem. This is an animal with swiveling hooks on its arms, a scissor beak strong enough to cut through tough material, massive eyes adapted for detecting movement in the dark, and a body mass approaching 1,100 pounds. It actively pursues and kills prey. At its full size, in its own territory, in total darkness, against a juvenile whale separated from its pod and diving in unfamiliar depth ranges, the squid is not automatically the weaker party. Whether the encounter could tip the other way is something the deep ocean has kept to itself. What science does have is the scar record, and a few anomalies in that record that the standard story does not fully account for. In science, anomalies are where the interesting questions live. The giant squid was an anomaly in the specimen record for a century before it was filmed alive. What else lives at those depths that has not been filmed? What else is large enough to leave marks that researchers have not yet correctly attributed? The deep ocean still contains things that have not been seen, and what it might do to a whale that pushes past its safe depth is a question that changes the stakes of every dive. The sperm whale's confirmed dive record sits at 7,400 feet. Theoretical models suggest the body could survive pressures found at around 9,800 feet. That gap between confirmed and theoretical is where an interesting and unsettling question lives. What happens at the limit? The flexible ribcage handles compression up to a point. The myoglobin stores oxygen up to a capacity. The redirected blood flow protects the vital organs up to a threshold. Every biological adaptation the whale carries has a ceiling. Nobody knows exactly where that ceiling is for a living animal under real dive conditions, because studying it directly is impossible. What researchers have done is model it, using the known anatomy of the sperm whale, the known pressure gradients at depth, and the physiological limits measured in related species. They constructed estimates of where the body would begin to fail. The picture those models produce is not a sudden collapse, it is a cascade. As the whale descends past its biological limit, the oxygen stored in blood and muscle would drop below the threshold needed for clear neurological function. The whale would become disoriented. Its descent, normally controlled and purposeful, would slow and become less directed. The heart rate, already reduced during a normal dive, would drop further. Below a certain oxygen level, muscle function begins to fail. the powerful tail flukes that drive the ascent would weaken. The whale would be deep disoriented and losing the ability to power itself back to the surface. Whether this has happened to a living whale in the wild is unknown. The ocean at those depths does not return its evidence easily, but researchers studying unexplained strandings, cases where sperm whales washed ashore in poor condition with no obvious external cause, have noted that some of the animals showed signs of tissue damage consistent with severe decompression events. Whether those whales had exceeded their depth limits or encountered some other physiological failure is not established. There is also the question of what happens to a whale that ascends too fast under duress. Normal ascent from a deep dive is controlled and steady. The myoglobin releases its oxygen stores on the way up, the ribcage re-expands as pressure drops, and the animal surfaces in a managed physiological state. If the whale panics, or is driven upward too fast by a threat at depth, the ascent rate could outpace the body's ability to manage the decompression process. Sperm whale bones recovered from deep-sea surveys have shown lesions consistent with bone damage caused by gas bubble formation, the same damage seen in human divers who ascend too fast. Scientists found these lesions in recovered specimens. Whether the affected animals survived long after is unknown. The whale's body is extraordinary. The adaptations it carries for deep pressure and breath-hold diving represent millions of years of refinement. But extraordinary is different from unlimited. Every system has a point past which it breaks. The deep ocean holds those broken points in permanent darkness, and what the sperm whale reveals about that darkness, simply by surviving in it, represents something larger than one species' biology. The sperm whale has been diving to the deep ocean for around 23 million years. For most of that time, humans did not know the deep ocean existed in any meaningful sense. The first reliable depth measurements of the open ocean were taken in the 1800s. The first photographs of the deep sea floor came in the 1950s. The first footage of a giant squid in its natural habitat was captured in 2004. The first footage of a juvenile colossal squid alive at depth came in 2023. The sperm whale had been visiting both of those animals in their own environment for longer than our species has existed. Every dive a sperm whale makes is a research expedition into a zone humans cannot reach without technology that barely exists and has never been deployed at scale. The whale descends without equipment, without light, without any support system, and navigates, hunts, fights, and returns. It has been doing this more times per day than a research team deploys in a decade. What the whale brings back up from those dives has given scientists a window they could not have opened any other way. The squid beaks catalogued from whale stomachs mapped species distributions across the deep Pacific and Atlantic that researchers had no other way to survey. The scar patterns on whale bodies produced the first size estimates of living squid that exceeded anything ever physically recovered. The acoustic data from tagged whales traced dive profiles and hunting behaviors at depths that no camera system has yet consistently accessed. The sperm whale is simultaneously a study subject, and researchers who have spent careers tracking individual whales describe a recurring experience. The animal you have been following for years, whose click patterns you recognize, whose scar map you have memorized, whose dive schedules you can predict, surfaces in front of your vessel, blows its angled spout into the air, and looks at you, paws, the largest brain in the history of animal life on this planet, suspended behind those eyes. What it understands about its own situation is unknown. What it understands about the deep zones it visits regularly, the squid it has fought thousands of times, the orca pods it has outmaneuvered since it was a calf, is encoded in 20 pounds of folded neural tissue that science has barely begun to interpret. What the sperm whale tells us about the ocean is this: the deep is not empty. The deep is full of things that have been evolving in the dark for millions of years, growing large, developing weapons, building sensory systems calibrated for an environment so extreme that our best technology struggles to reach it. The sperm whale is the only animal that regularly crosses the boundary between our world and that one. Every time it dives, It takes the boundary with it. Every time it surfaces, it carries the evidence back up on its skin. The circles on the head, the crescents on the flanks, the ambergris floating somewhere in a cold current, the 18,000 beaks packed in a single stomach, the 20-pound brain processing the acoustic landscape of a pod whose dialect no other group in the ocean speaks. The sperm whale has been living at the edge of what biology can survive for longer than anything we have built has lasted. And it goes back down tomorrow.